this podcast, I'm going to talk specifically about some of the hindrances that take place within the prison system, within the judicial body, right? Because we're talking about prison, we're talking about the things that take place in prison. And so most people out here, the only thing they're focused on is like, what did the person do and how much time did they get, right? Because you got to be able to look at the person's crime and then you make a personal judgment of it. And then it's easier for you to support the prison industrial complex. But in this podcast, I'm gonna focus specifically on one individual who is probably the biggest hindrance to real justice. And I'm gonna do some research because interestingly, they talk about AI entering the judicial realm, right? To make a better situation for inmates that are going in there, right? Because AI is neutral. You ask it a question, it gets the information. So in that respect, in this podcast, I'm focused on the judge, right? So, what is a judge supposed to do? Well, I'm just going to read what the job of a judge is in any criminal format, right? Because most of us don't really know that. Most of the public don't know what a judge is supposed to do. So, the responsibilities of presiding over trials. Judges manage the courtroom, including the jury selection process, evidence admission, and order proceedings. They also interpret the law. Judges apply the law to determine how the case will proceed. Instructing juries, judges instruct jurors on how the law and how to consider the evidence in sentencing. Judges determine the appropriate sentence for convicted defendants. Judges can approve search warrants. Judges set the schedule, resolve disputes, and enforce the courtroom. And the reason I read that is because the judge's job is very simple. They are a higher expert of law, and their only goal in any kind of criminal court case is to make decisions as it pertains to the law. So when somebody objects, they'll respond accordingly, according to the law that they understand it. Whatever the case may be, when it's all said and done, job of a judge is simply to oversee the trial, to be neutral. However, the overwhelming majority of judges that I've encountered and people like talking to other people that's in the penitentiary, judges are not that. Oftentimes, especially in Ohio, but oftentimes it's the defendant it's against the prosecution, who's to prove the case against the defendant, and the judge. The judge acts like he's on the side of the state. He's not being neutral. And so when the defendant goes in there, if he doesn't have a good lawyer, or if he has a lawyer like in Butler County, Ohio, that is on the side of the courts, then you go in there and anybody who's ever been, arrested and going to trial, you really rely on, even if it's a public defender, you really rely on them because you're in a situation where you're arrested, these charges are against you, you don't know anything about the law, and the first thing they do, and especially if you don't have any money, they give you an attorney. Now, if your attorney is, doesn't know how to practice law, and I've run into situations because I was a pro se litigant when I'm reading case law and I'm dealing with appellate attorneys and I'm mentioning, different type of structures within the case and case law, and they go, I didn't know that happened, where you can get an evidentiary hearing or something like that, then you know you're in trouble. But you have attorneys out there who the only thing that they're good at or they're put in place to do is to create plea bargains, because it's already been established that if every defendant out there decided they wanted to go to trial, the judicial body would just collapse. So many attorneys are there to do one thing and one thing only, and that's plea bargains. Now, when a person accepts a plea bargain, so I have friends that accepted plea bargains, even for something as high as murder, they're going in there, or homicide, a homicide that they were part of, or whatever the case may be, they go, the lawyer presents the plea bargain, and in Ohio, they do this thing where it's 18 to life, but the lawyer presents it saying that you'll do 18 years. If you stay out of trouble, you'll get out, 18 to life. So a person thinks, okay, I screwed up. I did something that I shouldn't have done. They regret it, whatever the situation for them is. And I'll take this 18 to life. I'll do the 18 years. I'll stay out the way, and then I'll get out. Well, in Ohio, the life sentence, the 18 to the life, the L, they call it the L, that's an illusion, because really it's just a straight life sentence. So when the lawyer presents it, He's presenting it like you're going to be good, you're going to get out. So a young kid, he has his family there, he made the mistake, okay? And if you're presenting 18 to life, you're saying that 18 years he should get out. The judicial body put that in place. So 18 to life means I go in there, I sign this plea bargain that this lawyer is telling me to sign, right? He's giving me advice to sign it, and he's presenting it to me that stay out of the way for 18 years, and you're gonna get out. So in that situation, it's the responsibility of the judge to tell him that even though it says 18 to life, when 18 years is up, you might have done everything you're supposed to do, but they can still keep you in there. That's not what's presented in most cases when you're dealing with a tale that's a life sentence, especially in Ohio. They're the most corrupt body that you'll ever come across. So I bring it. The onus is on the judge because the judge knows what's going on in the state. He knows what's going on in the prison systems. That's why if you ever seen a judge that sentenced a 15-year-old to adult prison, that judge is a certified piece of shit. Because you would never sentence a child to go into an adult prison. If you believe that all the things that they say about prison is true, why would you send that? Same thing. I knew a guy they called Pappy in there. 80 years old, he couldn't even move. Why is he still in there? I don't care. In that situation, it doesn't matter what his crime is. Like, you can push him over. He's not coming out. You know what I mean? Like, he's not getting up and he's not going to fight you. On the streets, a 5-year-old beat his ass. Like, so when you're dealing with judges, oftentimes you're dealing with a personality where the position of a judge, is supposed to be neutral. That's the only job a judge is supposed to do. Questions of law, keep order in the courtroom, make sure everything is fair and organized. That's it. But again, judges have personalities. Case in point, you look at Judge Judy, you look at all these other judges, the judge shows, and when they first came out, especially her, because she's kind of like the pioneer in it, you kind of like, because she's from New York and she's sassy and all of that. So it was funny the way the things she was doing. But in reality, she is the cancer of the judicial system. With all that personality and the decision making, you have judges out there. There was one, and I'm trying to remember it, and I had to ask around. His name was Hampman, Judge Hampman, and they called him Hanging Hampman because he specialized in what we say in prison, cracking people's skulls. Like, he'd give a person 25 years for, half an ounce of crack. They're out there selling it. And you might, again, I always say this, you might think it's all right. That's all right until it happens to you, until you're drinking, you have a drink, especially in Arizona, you cannot drink and drive. Like, I went in Ohio, I know guys with like 6 or 7 DUIs. In Arizona, if you get a DUI, they are cracking you. They got prisons out here specifically for DUI violators, okay? But when you're dealing with a judge like Hampman and a judge like Craig Hedrick, who passed away, who knew what happened to the case. Like, I was a pro se litigant. I'm explaining it, and he's not paying attention to anything. And so when you're dealing with case law or in legal proceedings, there's a thing called liberal construction. And liberal construction says, I may be telling you a bunch of shit, and you understand what I'm saying. I may be arguing ineffective assistance of counsel to you, but I'm not wording it that way, but you understand it, then you're supposed to step in as a judge and give me what is called liberal construction. In other words, Mr. Garcia, I understand what you're saying, but you cased your argument wrong. It should be ineffective assistance of counsel. And so then they will then take all the evidence I'm presented and put it under that. They don't do that. So you have these judges that come in and his personality. What's his name? The one with the OJ trial. Like, all these prosecutors, lawyers, they become famous for these super sensational cases. But that's not the judicial system. The judicial system is very simple. It should be the person gets arrested. He has a lawyer, whether it's a public defender or an actual paid attorney, which is always going to be better, unfortunately, because that's the way the system is structured. And they go before the judge. You have your court date. You're in front of the judge. And the judge is going to organize everything that takes place from beginning to end. So if something happened, like say a search warrant was applied, and you argue against that search warrant, and legally you're right, then the judge go in there and just end the trial. This search warrant was no good. You had no business. And they'll start talking about a judge right now. I'll get his information. But this judge is such a great judge because he's not attacking. He's defending defendants in front of the court. And in one particular one, he was basically telling the prosecutor, like, and the police, like, you just pulled him over or you just messed with him because he was black. And so everybody's like, this is how a judge is supposed to be. Yeah, I mean, to some degree, he's supposed to be that way. But I don't need him to be likable like that. I just need him to do his fucking job and be neutral. That's it. The rest of it will take care of itself. Whether I'm guilty or not, just be neutral. But don't, and again, Ohio, my experience, I went through 2 trials out there, 2 different cases, and I watched police take the stand and lie. I watched the judge being presented information that he just ignored. And this is throughout the country. So as far as I'm concerned, judges are the beginning of the process of corrupt prisons. Not all of them, but the majority of them. And so there's an article, and I'll post it up here, about now with AI. They had an AI structure, and it was, I don't know if he was a lawyer, but he wanted to use it. And they had created the AI, basically is, your case comes in, you have all this information relevant to your case. You feed it into the AI. The AI has access to all legal documents, has case law, and the AI can, in seconds, say, this is the way you need to fight your case. And so imagine if a judge was AI and you presented all that, the AI could look at it and say, I don't see any probable cause. I don't see, whatever the case, they'll be able to access the case law necessary to give the defendant the best possible outcome. You're supposed to be, innocent until proven guilty, but that's not what takes place. You're dealing with personalities like these judges that I've shown you, and they get up there and they'll look at a defendant, oftentimes like Butler County and Craig Hedrick and all these other judges in there, and you're dealing with these young brothers that are in there, and the reality is they despise them. They won't say it. A judge, especially in types of places like Butler County, but it happens throughout the country, you have judges and they see these kids and they're influenced based on what they see on TV, or maybe they're influenced from working years and years in the judicial system, and they don't have the answers. But the kids keep coming in, whether it be for murder or drug dealing or whatever, and they're coming from broken homes, dysfunctional families, all the shit that takes place when you're a kid and you get to the point where you make these terrible decisions, right? And so they're dealing with them in there, but they're dealing with them from a level of venom, a level of even hatred at times. And so you have to have something in place that's going to kind of even the scales when it comes to that. And for me, the AI, now I wouldn't say I would want a judge AI to come in there and just decide like, guilt or innocent. All I would want is for it to be neutral enough to make the decisions. And then when I'm presenting my case, that I have every opportunity to either win or to create enough doubt if I'm innocent or not innocent. It doesn't matter. There's a process. And it doesn't matter who you are. You're a celebrity. You're a politician. I mean, just look at the bullshit between Trump and Biden. Like, he's part, like, there's people, when I was locked up, I had tons of people that I knew that used the pardon system or the clemency system. So you would write the governor and you would ask for clemency, or you would ask for a pardon. And those things are so rare. Like, people, I've never met anyone who actually got a pardon. And now they're just pardoning each other's children. Because Biden's son, he did what he did. But these fucking people, it's only when you want it to work for you will you sit up there and you'll make the argument that, well, he should be pardoned because you don't want people coming after him. Trump went in there for the first 4 years. Now, I'm not Trump. I'm not Biden. I really personally don't give a shit because I feel like it's all being run by powers that you can't see. But I'm saying he got up there the first 4 years and they did everything to get him out. So, yeah, he's going to be filled with venom. And now you're worried about it. So now you're pardoning your son. All these people are getting pardons. Meanwhile, there's people that's been locked up for 30 years, 40 years, 25 years. and they sent pardon, they request to be clemency and never hear anything back or get a denial. It's a game that the masses are not aware of. And so people are so busy out here, they don't give a shit. Doesn't matter. I'm gonna continue to break down this legal system because it's necessary. You got 2.7 million people incarcerated. I did 14 years, but 10 for actually 55 pounds of weed I got arrested with. I get out, I come to Arizona, weed's legal now. I remember going to trial, and Brad Burris, which is the prosecutor picture I showed you earlier, and the judge, that was my judge, that's Craig Hedrick. He's dead now. He died while I was in prison. And both of them worked together to put 3 people away for 35 years, even though they knew that the search warrant was no good. So I'm in Butler County, and I remember the trial where, like, they brought the weed, they brought, I had a gun, I had money, and they just made me seem like cartel, the worst person in the world. He brought his guns down here so he can protect his interests. I come out here, and they got, what, dispensaries. When you walk in, the first fucking thing you see is what? A guy with a gun. So it only matters, and I remember they call it D2 out here, which is one of the dispensaries. I drive for rideshare at the time. I picked up one of the guys, the main dudes. It was a young kid, young white kid, and he was baked. Like, he was I picked him up at a mansion, and he was telling me, oh, they're doing soups, they're doing this, they're doing, like, for one of these dispensaries. And he asked me, what do you think about it? And I said, I think it's bullshit. And, like, I blew his high. I said, I did 14 years for this shit, and you're out here doing it like it's nothing. Then he got a car, and he's like, we're talking about expunging records. I don't give a fuck. I did the time already. Unless you got a check for me, I don't care. But again, when I was in trial, it was all about, he's a drug dealer. He's got guns, you know what I'm saying? All this shit, and I'm this big villain until you motherfuckers can make money out of it. Then it's not bad. Then it's recreational. Really? It's fucking recreational drugs. So the system is structured just like that. It's a microcosm of society. Some things are considered bad to people, like rape is bad, unless your father or your family member, is going to Yale and you're part of a family that has money. Then rape is not so bad. You can get 6 months for it. Which is it? Think about all the cases you hear where motherfuckers got money and they use the money and they get these light sentences, and then you got this young kid who comes from poverty. He's trying to hustle to make money. He gets arrested with crack, 3 strikes law, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, all those fuck sticks that was in back in the days. They was in power writing bills, and we fucking applauded them. They're these great politicians, these great humanitarians. They all a part of that shit. So if you truly want to, not only just the prison industrial complex, but if you truly want some sense of revolution when it comes to being fair across the board, you have to, as the people, have to put in mechanisms in place that will be able to thwart anything that they're doing. But that takes, unity. And we don't have, I've been out 3+ years and I'm watching social media. We don't have no fucking unity. It's about how many likes I can get, how many fucking, I can become a celebrity and all that shit. People, you got them in rap videos talking about how prison. They ain't not doing anything for those guys that are locked up. You got to be in prison, have a decade, some shit where you understand what it is to wake up every day in a sense of hopelessness because of a decision you made, a bad decision you made. So with that said, again, this podcast was strictly about the judges, and I will get back to that at another time, really elaborate on it. But in the next podcast, I will talk about what it is inside prison, the mechanism in prison when it comes to actually making money. I'm going to use a snippet from a documentary called The House I Live In, where they go to the American Associations of Corrections. I think that's the right word. And they're interviewing a lady, and she's like bragging about, restraints and the shit that they got that she's there to sell. It's like a flea market, a supermarket, whatever the fuck you want to call it, a convention of all prison shit, from GTL, the phones, the tablets, the restraints, the Qurans, everything is for sale, industrial-wise, prison industrial complex. And they're talking to her, and she starts to realize that the person doing the interview, his angle is what she's doing is bad. She realizes it, and she's like, I don't think I should say anything else. That is what society is when it comes to the political aspect of dealing with prison reform. So anyway, thank you for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll keep pumping these videos out. Anyway, thank you. Peace.